everyone. It's Richie Burke, and today we're back at my alma mater, Marquette University, for a social media heavy episode. And we got a couple special guests. We got social media phenom Father Marquette in the building, and we got Tim Cigelske, who is the director of social media here at Marquette, also an adjunct professor, the author to the book Analytics in Action, a regular contributor to Draft Magazine, and his alter alias is the Beer Runner.
Yeah.
Tim, do you want to touch on the Beer Runner quick? You're like a pioneer in the beer running movement.
Sure. So it's a blog I write for Draft Magazine, a beer magazine, and about 7, 8, actually almost maybe 9 years ago now, I've been freelancing for them, writing about beer in a variety of ways. And my editor came to me and said, "We want you to specialize in something and start a blog for our website." So you can kind of tell this is a little bit dated already, because starting a blog for a website was a big thing, and they wanted me to specialize in some sort of niche. And they asked what that would be, and I said, no one is writing about beer in the context of an active lifestyle. People who like to craft beer and then like to reward themselves, with their exercise. So I started that, and this was like when Twitter had first gotten started. It was its early days, and I started an alias, the Beer Runner, on Twitter, and was just shocked to see how much it blew up. And that was actually one of the things that illustrated the power of social media. Is like, if you have a niche, if you have a community, you can reach them. Like I had my own personal at that point. I had Tim Cigelske, but people didn't care about that in this community. They wanted to hear about beer and running, so it really took on a life of its own.
And that not only took off in Milwaukee, that took off. You had a national audience, didn't you?
Yeah. So Draft Magazine's based out of Phoenix, and I'm based out of here, but the audience is international. I've heard from people all over the place. I went to San Francisco last fall to cover the World Beer Mile Championships.
Yeah.
And the winning team was from Canada, and there's a team from Australia. So it just shows the international reach of something like this. So in fact, one of the guys I met was like a 22, 23-year-old guy named Lewis Kent, and interviewed him. He was an unknown. The next day he goes out and he wins the Beer Mile World Championships, crushes this American who was the favorite. Since then he's been on Ellen, he's been sponsored by Brooks, and he just picked up a 6-figure deal as a sponsor for a Beer Mile race series. So he gets paid over $100,000 to go around the country, actually around the world, and run and drink beer.
So he's almost up on your level.
That's funny. When I wrote a blog about it and sent it to my editor, I was like, this guy got 6 figures to basically live my dream. And they were like, that should have been you. You should have got that. And I was like, well, I can't run a beer mile in 4 minutes and 47 seconds. So this guy's elite. Like, he runs for his college team. And I can run a beer mile, and I think pretty fast. I've done it 7, 8, 9 times. But I don't run it a sub 5-minute mile.
What is a beer mile?
Yeah. So a beer mile is 4 laps around the track and 4 beers. So you're drinking the beer, you're chugging it, and you have 12 ounce. There's certain rules about what you can and can't drink. It's encouraged that you put it over your head after you drink it to show that you've finished it. And in the elite circles, when they're having like a championship, they actually measure how much you have left in the bottle. There can be a little bit left over, like if you're drinking and there's a lot of foam. But it can't be over a certain amount or you get disqualified. So the essentials are 4 laps, 4 beers as fast as you can, and no puking. If you puke, you have to run a penalty lap. But there's all these like arcane sort of rules that people have built up over the years over the beer mile.
Okay, in case any of our viewers are interested in that, what's the strategy behind it? I'm just wondering, do you stop and chug the beer, or are you actually still moving at a decent pace while drinking it? And is it a can or a cup? Because
it can't be a cup. You have to open it yourself. So if it's already open, that's against the rules.
Okay.
So it can be a can, it can be a cup, or I'm sorry, it can be a can, it can be a bottle. It has to be over 5%, I think, ABV. So you can't have like a near beer or a low ABV beer. You have to drink like a real beer, open it up, finish it in the chug zone. So if you go beyond certain parameters, you also get disqualified. So you can't run while doing it, but the people who are really elite at it, they're sort of walking fast because they drink it in under 4 seconds or under 5 seconds, 4 to 5 seconds. Chugging it, putting it down, and then keep running. But the people who are just everyday, you or I, sort of, they stop, they drink. and it may take them, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. But the people who are really well trained, they practice by drinking soda, drinking seltzer, drinking, things that kind of like foam in your stomach and like are hard to drink. They train by running and drinking that, and then when they drink beer, the alcohol doesn't really even affect them because they're going so fast. And the alcohol then hits them maybe 10, 15 minutes after they finish. So the science of the beer mile, what everyone wanted to know.
It's fascinating and impressive. Before we move on, you had a streak.
Yeah.
You're like the Cal Ripken, Brett Favre of beer running.
So I, is one of the gimmicks I did for Draft Magazine to kind of keep the things fresh. I decided for my 29th birthday I was going to run and drink a beer every day for a year. I did that. It was fun, so I kept going. I did it for 3 years. Stopped after 3 years after we had our second kid, my wife and I. And I was like, something's got to give a little bit. So I slowed down. I'm still drinking. I'm still running. I just don't do it every single day as I did for this streak.
So you wrote a book on analytics.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot out there.
Mm-hmm.
Small business owners, they sometimes get overwhelmed, or marketers, on what they should actually be paying attention to. What do you recommend?
Mm-hmm. So in the book, I have like a 7-step process, and I stole shamelessly from Simon Sinek to start with why. So the big thing is, like, when people hear analytics, they hear metrics, they hear social media, especially for a small business, they're like, well, I want to succeed by getting more likes, get more fans, get more followers, get more whatever. And it sounds ultra simple, but people skip over this step all the time. You start with why. That's that thing I stole from Simon Sinek. If you haven't seen the TED Talk or read his book, like, he basically just says you have to start with a mission. So if you're a small business and you're like, well, I want to get more likes, post more cat videos, And I say that jokingly because, yes, that will get you more likes. Right. But that doesn't mean that's going to get you your mission, your why, your importance. So as a small business, the important thing is to start with, well, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to do? And then once you have that, then you can move backwards and say, now I'm going to pay attention to when I post this thing that will support what I'm interested in, my goal, what sort of engagement is it getting? Did this post succeed on its own merits? But you have to first go back and define, this is what I stand for, this is what I do. And then you can use all different kinds of measurements. You can use, engagement per post, overall, number of likes, and engagement for your page. That really depends, and sometimes people call things vanity metrics if you're measuring likes and whatnot. I don't necessarily think they're vanity metrics, but I do think that the most important thing is start with why. Start with what you want to do, and then you can measure the results based on that.
Is that a common area you see, just not having the why or the end goal in mind? Because a lot of clients will come to us and they want to build their page, and it's, okay, why are you building your page? What's actually going to move the needle? What are the common pitfalls you see?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is just getting distracted. Just sit down and say, what do I stand for? What do I want to do? And because if you don't do that, you see another one of the common pitfalls of people just flitting from platform to platform. Mm-hmm. They hear Pinterest is in the news, and then they need a Pinterest page. They hear Snapchat's in the news, and they need a Snapchat account. They hear Instagram is big, so they say, well, what about Instagram? Should we go there? On the surface, none of those are wrong, but they're also not right. It just depends on what's right for you. So one of the biggest things is trying to do too much. And I'd say that's closely related to trying to do a little bit of everything, like trying to be everywhere, or setting up a Pinterest account but then not doing anything with it, not following through. Mm-hmm. 1 week really diving into an account, and the next week you get busy, so you forget about it. So one of the things is just asking for help. It's okay if you don't get every platform, but only you can say, this is what I stand for. And then once you know what you stand for and what you want to accomplish, reaching out to someone, whether it's an agency or a consultant or whatever, to say, how can we accomplish these goals? And then finding the correct best places to be.
So that's good you brought up platforms, because there's new platforms emerging all the time. They're evolving all the time. Businesses tend to think they need to be everywhere. Instagram's hot, Snapchat's hot. Mm-hmm. Do you have any guidelines on what platforms are right for what business and where they should be putting their time, energy, and resources?
Yeah. So the two things, one is just demographics, so is your audience there? So just because you're hearing a lot about, say, Pinterest, that doesn't necessarily mean your audience is there. Or maybe they're there, but you don't know about it and you're missing an opportunity. So, one of the big things is talk to a knowledgeable expert on it. And then you can also do your own research. One of my favorite resources is Pew Research. They'll release reports, both an annual social media report and then periodic, here's what's new in the demographic shifts. So you can see, for instance, 18 to 29-year-olds gravitate towards X or Y. Do you have 18 to 29-year-olds as a customer? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. So I'd say one of the big things is just first being aware of the demographics, where they are and where they aren't. And then secondly, what does the platform offer for you? So are you a visual organization? Do you have a lot of things you can show? If you make art, if you make crafts, if you say if you're, you make bathroom fixtures, high-end bathroom fixtures or something. Those sort of things lend themselves to a visual that could be good for Instagram. Now, if you're a media company and you produce a lot of articles, written text, Instagram is probably not the best place for you. You want to get links out for people to go to your website and read. So Instagram might not be the best place, but Twitter might be really good. Facebook might be really good. So the two things are, what is it you have to offer? Is it visual? Is it not visual? Is it something else? And does the platform help you with that? And then secondly, what are the demographics of the platform? So are you reaching the right audience when you are there?
So pretty much going where your audience is spending time, where you can add value to them, and as well as playing to your strengths if you're a visual business, if you're good with writing, good on video, whatever that means.
That's a summary.
Let's stay on demographics. So as the social media director for Marquette, you have a very wide range of people you need to appeal to. You need to appeal to high schoolers thinking of Marquette. You need to appeal to current students. You need to appeal to the large basketball following, the parents, the 50-year-old donor. How do you spread Marquette messages? Obviously, those demographics are all looking for different things from Marquette. How do you spread the message to them while staying true to Marquette and its values and overall messaging?
Yeah. So I think the one way you can think of it is you have a family. You talk a little bit differently to different members of your family, right? So you talk a little bit differently to your grandpa as you would your cousin. You talk a little bit differently to your son or daughter as you would to your brother or sister. But the things you talk about are similar. Like if you go to a family reunion, you're going to talk about similar things. You're going to have similar conversations. Your tone is going to be different. Maybe the words you use are going to be different. So a similar thing is when you're talking to that same community in social media, you have the same message, basic message. These are all the same people in your community, but an 18-year-old, you have to speak their language. And a 7-year-old, you have to speak their language. So I might share the same post in two different places, and I'll give you an example. National Best Friends Day was last week. So on Facebook, I shared an older picture from the 80s, and I said, here's to National Best Friends Day. Remember all of the good friends you met on campus. And it was like a picture from like a throwback, right? Because we have an older demographic on Facebook. On Instagram, I had a different picture. On Twitter, I have a different picture because they're a different audience. So I had maybe a more contemporary picture. And then I put tag your friends that you met on campus. Same basic message, same substance, but the tone was different. Maybe the picture was different. So I think that's the biggest thing is you stay true to your message. Don't radically change your message just because you're talking to someone else. Don't try to be too cool or too whatever, but you're going to meet people where they are. So the big thing, if you hear someone talking to their mom or dad on the phone and you're like, why do you sound different? Because you're talking to your mom or dad or you're talking to whoever. It's just that sort of tone switch that you have. And that's the big thing when you're talking to people in different sort of communities, or the same community but different sort of needs. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay.
Complete sense.
Cool.
Going along with that, let's touch on Snapchat. How vital has that been to Marquette's social media appealing to that younger audience?
Yeah. So that's where Father Marquette comes in here. And again, that's going back to same basic message, different style. So with Snapchat, the big thing is you don't take yourself too seriously. Like, so we showcase campus, we showcase tours, we showcase admissions, all that sort of stuff. But instead of showing a picture just of a beautiful spot on campus, with Snapchat you want to be in the moment, and you want to be personal, and you want to be a little bit silly. So Father Marquette, who's the namesake of Marquette University, the statue, travels around campus or travels outside of campus and shares these adventures with him. And he's kind of funny. He makes jokes. We call him, instead of dad jokes, we have father jokes, Father Marquette. And you're able to, reach a demographic, 18 and 22-year-olds, who appreciate that sort of humor. They're goofier, sillier, whatever. They want to have a good time. And you might showcase something that in just a different way that you would on Facebook or Twitter. And it just gives a personality to what we're trying to share.
Yep. And where do you see the future of Snapchat going? It started with a teen demographic, predominantly it's skewing older.
Yeah.
What do you see for the future of the platform?
It's so funny. I see, like, in the same article every couple of months, the olds are getting on Snapchat. And I wrote an article maybe 2 years ago called Snapchat for Old People. And it was just explaining to people, here's what Snapchat is, and here's why it's different, here's why it's not going away. And then I did a session yesterday for faculty and staff on campus, a bit older demographic, about what Snapchat is and why it's important. They're making inroads in sort of the beyond 22 to 25-year-old demographic. They're not there yet, but it will get that way. We've seen that with every social network. We saw it with Facebook. It started with college students, and now it's grandparents. I don't think it's going to happen immediately, but like anything that matures, it will bring in a more age-inclusive audience, and then there'll be something else. There'll be something else beyond Snapchat that reaches 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, because they want their own space. They want their young person place. We all do at some point. Whether it's AOL Instant Messenger or Snapchat, there will be something new. And I'm not going to say it's going to replace Snapchat, but it will be that new place that teens go to hang out.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is look back at time. You said Facebook started on college campuses. Now people's grandparents are on it. Instagram started really in the teen to college demographic because their parents were all on Facebook and they wanted something else. And now I think the fastest growing segment is women in their 40s on Instagram. So you think Snapchat is kind of that next platform. Moving on, let's talk Twitter.
Yeah.
Is Twitter dead?
No. Twitter's not dead. And the reason why is Twitter could do a much better job for a lot of things. So I'll say up front, their harassment problems on Twitter are just atrocious in some circles. They've addressed that and they do a better job at that. Their ads just need a refresh. Starting to see ads there that like you see at the bottom of like clickbait websites. I'm like, come on, Twitter. They need to do a better job of mainstreaming. They have, I don't know the last time I checked, but they have hundreds of millions of fans, people who use Twitter, but not as much as Facebook, and by comparison, they seem dwarfed. So Twitter has some challenges. But what Twitter does better than anyone else is real-time conversation. So whether that's The Bachelor, Bachelorette, show that's on that people are live tweeting about, which actually reaches in some cases a young demographic. Breaking news, a sporting event, Super Bowl, the NBA Finals. Twitter does that better than anyone. No one has touched them on that. Facebook has tried a few times. They just released like a standalone sports app. I don't even know if it still exists. But Twitter does that, and if no one else can touch them in that, they will be valuable. They'll be bought out by someone. They'll be, they'll revamp their strategy. I just saw, they're trying new things. Some of the things they're trying seems a little like, why do we need that? Like retweeting yourself and that sort of thing. But they're not going to go away because they do that one thing well, real-time conversation, better than anyone else. So Twitter's not dead. It's a valid question, but far from it.
And they did get their old CEO back.
Yeah.
And they bought Periscope.
They bought Periscope. Just yesterday, they invested in SoundCloud, which I think is doing really good things, like democratizing audio, much like Twitter democratized, just short form microblogging, as they called it. No one uses that term anymore. But they're trying these things that complement real-time conversation. So whether that's live streaming or putting a snippet of audio out there, They're getting better. They're not there yet. But their standard of comparison is always Facebook, and Facebook just crushes it so hard that it's hard to compare.
That said, as far as Twitter goes, I agree that no one's going to touch it as far as a cocktail conversation. You can't have that real-time conversation on Facebook or Instagram. Clearly, but for a brand that's seen its engagement fall off, do you think that's because our attention shifted when Twitter and Facebook were the big platforms, and then Instagram came and Snapchat, and Facebook evolved a little bit and has such a good paid platform, so that really did a good job of staying relevant? Do you think Twitter just failed to evolve?
Yeah, I think you touched on both their problems. One is like you have other networks that emerge that nibble away at them. So you have Snapchat that just came on the scene, recently speaking, and that has eaten away from its young person, new user base. And the second thing is just failure to innovate at a pace that others have. And that could even just mean acquiring companies that innovate. So Facebook did that really well with Instagram. Like years ago you heard about Facebook has a young person problem. They're not reaching a young demographic. What'd they do? They bought Instagram. Right. Instagram is now Facebook, and Instagram has a very young demographic, a very desirable demographic for new users for them. What would have happened if Twitter had bought Instagram? We may be having a different conversation. Twitter could have, assimilated all those new users, and they're looked at differently, or just their, overall user base is different because they suddenly got this influx of new, different users. So Facebook or Twitter has failed on kind of both those fronts. And you mentioned the new CEO. Jack Dorsey might be addressing some of that. But under like the last CEO, which he I think did a decent job at steering the ship on its same course, but not looking 5 years in advance, 2 years in advance, even a year in advance to say, how are we going to be fundamentally different to compete with these new people?
Let's touch on live streaming. I mentioned Periscope.
Yeah.
Facebook released Facebook Live to everyone just a few months ago. Mm-hmm. Is live streaming really the future of content? How big is that going to get?
So for the first thing I'll say,
have you used it much at Marquette to this point?
I haven't used it much at Marquette, and I think it's facing a couple of issues. I think it is going to be the future to some degree. Right now, it's in that sort of experimental phase where there's so much out there that just isn't quality stuff that it has a perception problem, or just like a quality problem. And that's true of any new social network. When you got some early adapters, but you got a lot of people just trying it out who don't really know how to use it. So right now, if you go to Periscope or if you go to Facebook Live, you'll see some good stuff, but you'll also see just kind of not such good stuff, and that will turn you off for a while. What I think Periscope and other live video needs in order to really take it to the next level is they need a moment that people can point to that said, wow, this is really useful. And Twitter had that with the, if you remember this, plane crash in the Hudson River, yep, where it did a crash landing on the river, and there was a rescue, and someone who was on a boat next to it took a picture and posted it on Twitter, like right next to the plane crash, and everyone was okay, I should say, if you don't remember that. Yep. But it felt like a real time, I'm getting this, unfiltered from the people on the street, and a news organization couldn't offer that. And if Periscope can offer that, and they already have, but like to a large degree where people recognize that's the Periscope moment, this is an insight I saw that I couldn't get anywhere else, it will take it to the next level, I think.
All right, let's touch on Facebook ads quick.
Yeah. Do
you think that's the best ROI from an ad standpoint in general for small businesses?
Yes. Next question. Yeah, I mean, far and away, Facebook has done ads better than anyone else.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think because they had a lot of failures to start with, and they got a lot of criticism, and they had problems with privacy and what's an ad and what's not. Like your friend likes so and so or such and such, like you should like their page, and that kind of was like, I think there was a class action lawsuit against them. Mm-hmm. So they got smarter. They had a lot of early failures back when Twitter didn't even have ads. Twitter was just like, we're not ready for ads. We're not ready for ads. Facebook put ads on early, and as a result screwed up, and as a result got better. So now their ads are so good, and you can target so well that for a relatively low cost, you can reach the audience you want with your sponsored post. And you look at the alternatives maybe in the non-digital world, a billboard, it costs a lot of money, and you don't know the results. On Facebook, you immediately know the results. You can target who you want, and it's a pretty low cost. So to answer your question, yes, definitely.
Right, it really blows my mind that people haven't really latched onto it yet, because like you said, you could get an ad in your trade magazine for a local business or a local magazine for $1,000, decent price. For that same price, if you really optimize Facebook ads, you can get 30 cents a click to a website. Here's 3,000 relevant clicks for the same price, and you have no idea what's coming from that ad, really.
Yeah.
So how long do you think Facebook will stay on top as far as an ad platform? Do you think they have such a big incentive to prove themselves right now after their IPO, and not everyone's caught on to it, that the value of that will kind of go back to where it should be at some point? Do you think we're in the golden age of Facebook ads, and how long do you think this will last for?
Yeah. So to answer your first question, I mean, we are or one of your questions, we are in the golden age of Facebook ads. Like right now, the ROI in it is so good. Their ads are actually valuable. People want to see them. What will happen next, I don't know, but I am interested to see how advertising changes, with content marketing. Medium is going to have sponsored posts. Snapchat just announced they'll have ads between friend stories. Ads have gotten smarter, a lot smarter. They used to be more static. They used to be like ads. Now they're less like ads and more like something you want to see, for good or bad. But I think, kind of moving forward, we're going to see advertising continue to look more like what your friend posts, what you want to see, personalized. Some people don't like that because it's like intruding, advertisement on sort of your friend space, but that's how people make money, and that's how social platforms make money. And so I think we'll continue to see an evolution of ads where they're actually more useful and more personalized and more friendly to the user.
Yep. Last question I have for you. You've been at Marquette for quite a while. You were a student here. You've worked here for
8 years, almost 8 years, yeah.
What do you like most about Marquette? What keeps you here?
So I've been at Marquette between working here and undergrad over a third of my life. I have a couple of coworkers who've been here over 25 years in our office. So I've been here almost 8, and it's a fraction of what some other people have been, almost 30 years. And I remember my first year here, I emailed a coworker who'd been here over 20 or 25 years. It was an anniversary, a big one, like 20 or 25, I can't remember which. And I just said, what's your advice? I'm a new guy, I've been here six months. What should I pay attention? What should I do? And I was really trying to find my bearings, even though I'd gone here as an undergrad, like very different working here and trying to fit into the culture and that sort of thing. And she said, enjoy the people. Spend time to just enjoy your colleagues and talk with them. And I mean, that's true of anywhere, but we have a big community of faculty, staff, students, that sort of thing. I have the fortunate luck to be able to teach in a classroom. I can work with a wide variety of people in marketing communication, so I'm working with different colleges. I'm not in a silo. So I try to always remember that and not take it for granted that I can go talk to someone in engineering, I can talk to someone in business, I can talk to someone in education. That's a huge luxury that a lot of other people just don't have. So one of my favorite things is just like the soaking in the atmosphere of people who take education seriously and take this place seriously, but not themselves too seriously. So hopefully that's not too sappy of an answer, but that's what I enjoy most about it.
No, that's awesome. I definitely felt the community when I was here for my 4 years of undergrad.
Cool.
So where can people find you if they're interested? Other than the local Milwaukee beer mile races.
Right. Just give me a 6-pack and I'll be there. just invite me. Yeah, I mean, you can find me. It's funny, I tell my students or my interns I have a digital footprint, so just Google Tim Cigelske. So that's one way to do it, but you can look me up on Twitter, tCycleTim, or just search Tim Cigelske, at The Beer Runner, at Father Marquette. Yeah, find me and connect with me. Happy to talk.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. It was great having you on.
Happy to be here anytime.
Awesome.